when I had the opportunity to hang out with Ryan Wilson in Chicago, we were talking about. I think this was maybe the day or the day after that you had your session there at the conference, and he was praising your work. And one thing he said that as your career had progressed, your poetry had become more and more like speech, but not in a prosaic way. But it is very natural, very direct, and very speech like. So, um, I have not, to be honest, I haven't read your earlier work like he has. But was there kind of a progression from? Did you start out in more kind of traditional formal verse?
Yes, we all did. Everybody did. It's the way you were raised, and then finally, the whole goal of poetry is eventually to have your own voice heard.
Hmm.
Just that, and you work at it until Dick Wilbur made a comment before he died. They asked him for a comment on a book of mine, and he said, "It is a stream of good talk."
Mm-hmm.
And I took that compliment to heart because Dick, in many ways, was the Mozart of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
Dick's poems
Yeah.
were not good talk. Dick's poems were minuets. I mean, he could make a poem like a ballet.
So you said that everybody started in your generation started writing in traditional forms. That is certainly not the case now. Somebody going through a poetry MFA program. I mean, I know people who have done this recently, and that's just not it's not the case anymore. So it's interesting to hear that that was the case when you were coming up, even after kind of modernism had and free verse had developed. Um, was that something that your generation had recovered? Had that been gone out of fashion, then come back into use at a certain point, or was this
No,
before?
I think most of the poets who are around my age, if they're still around, are very much formally interested in poems.
Hmm,
I think and some of what is called free verse is just junk. I mean,
right.
I was talking to one person, said, well, he was a young fellow. He said, don't you think if we use that word in a poem, it makes it more emphatic? And I said, well, I know that word. I said, I've been in the service. I've heard it a few times. And I said, do you know what it means? He said, well, everyone knows what it means. I said, no, etymologically, do you know what it means? So what does it mean? He said, it means to enforce or to fertilize. I said, if I use that where you would use the word, tell me how it sounds. Fertilize you. Get out of that fertilizing car. What the fertilizer are you doing here? Grammatically, it's stupid.
Right. I can hear Mike cracking up in the background there.
But this is,
Yeah.
I mean, they think they're being emphatic, they're just being wrong.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've heard women read their poems at the poetry forum. They think nothing of saying that.
So that speech like quality in your poems today, is that something that you consciously worked towards at all, or is that something that you knew early on that you wanted to get to, and were?
I worked on it, and I worked on it just today. I gave Mike a poem that I just finished, and it's an agony because to bring it down to what I want it to be, you have to eliminate so much scruff, so much
Hmm.
preference. And I was working on a poem. I'll read it to you here. It's called "The Fate of Nothing," and the epigraph is from Denis de Rougemont's book "The Devil's Share," in which he says the devil's first trick is his incognito. And this is the poem. Forget the pitchfork, the red pajamas, and the Satan sideshow. Save those for Halloween. What's diabolical reflects deficiency. Where we lack courage, the lack is devilish. If we lack love and let it molder into hate, the lack is devilish. When Omar Khayyam said, I myself am heaven and hell, he meant that God and fate existed within him. It's always been like that. If we resist, we keep the devil at bay. If we succumb, the devil has his way with us. In case you've forgotten, the word evil hides within the word devil. It's more than symbolic. It's literally true and shows what's mocked us since the world began. Where some see losses, others see gains. Where others see pleasure, some see pain. No matter what we see or do, we're never certain in advance if what we do is right or what we see is true. What else explains why Abel noticed nothing in his brother to suggest his killer would be Cain? By then, it was too late for anything but hate and fate.